Okay, so you're ready to read chapters 12 through 17 of Huck? So let me give you the scoop. All right, so some things to think about. Chapter 12. This is a traveling chapter. Jim and Huck are on their adventures. They are going to encounter a wrecked steamboat and some really bad dudes. Someone's life is going to be in danger, and Huck and Jim are going to be trapped. So some things to look forward to in chapter 12. Chapter 13, we've got them running away on a skiff. And when it talks about a skiff in this chapter, you're going to need to know that that's just a little boat. It'd be like a little dinghy, a little fishing boat to us. And Huck faces his first real moral crisis, okay? He's just escaped some really bad guys. And then he feels bad having left them. So he has to decide whether or not he should help the really bad murderer guys or not. So that's moral crisis for Huck number 1. More lying in this chapter, okay? Lying for a good cause, but you know how Huck rolls. We're going to lie. That brings us to chapter 14. 14, nothing really happens in 14. This is a talking chapter. They have stolen some books, and so they're reading about kings and dukes and having discussions about language. They have a debate because Huck tells Jim that there are people who speak different languages, that Frenchmen speak French, and it's different than English, and they have this debate over whether or not that's right, whether you should speak different languages, and you'll be surprised who the winner is and why that reasoning wins out, so pay attention to that. If you're doing the role of religion for your project, this is a great chapter for you. They're going to have an extended discussion on Solomon, so something to think about there. Chapter 15, they have a plan. Huck and Jim have decided, more Jim, that they are going to go to Cairo, and Cairo is where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi, and they're going to sell their raft there and buy passage on a steamboat to take Jim up north, where he will be free. And that sounds all well and good, except remember where Huck has been raised. He has been raised in Missouri, a slave state. And to him, according to what he knows about society, slavery is good. Even though it's really not, in his mind it is. And by helping Jim, he's doing something in his mind that is awful. So we have... that's going to come up a little bit later, actually. So they have this plan. They get lost in the fog, and Huck plays his second practical joke on Jim. Pay really close attention to that second practical joke. It comes after the fog, because I think that the result of that practical joke marks the biggest change in Huck and Jim's relationship. Okay, so really pay attention to that. Which brings us then to chapter 16 and Huck's second moral crisis, and it has to do with what I was talking to you about. Huck realizes that he's helping Jim, a slave, escape. And that goes against everything that society where he has lived has told him was right. Okay? So he has this dilemma. What does he do? Does he help Jim? Does he turn him in? And there's this big crisis moment for Huck. And he's kind of pushed into that because of some people that he encounters. So you definitely want to pay attention to that. He makes his decision. I won't tell you what it is. I'll let you read it for yourself. And they continue traveling. They've had lots of bad news. Remember the rattlesnake skin? It hasn't left them alone. This is a chapter of bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. Of missed locations, of losing things, and of near-death experiences. So the bad luck chapter, if ever there was one. So, horrific accident, chapter 16, almost killed, brings them to then chapter 17. In chapter 17, Huck and Jim have been separated. And Mark Twain writes this chapter as a sort of, I don't know if you know the old story of like the Hatfields and the McCoys. You know, the two families that are always fighting. have been fighting for generations and generations, and nobody even really remembers why they're still fighting, but they hate each other. So it's feuding families. This time they're called the Shepherdsons and the Grangerfords. All right, and so Huck has come to the Grangerfords household. They let him in. Interesting enough, the way their family unit is structured. So if you're doing the multimedia project analyzing family units and structures, this is an important chapter for you. Lots of interesting parallels here. In fact, they even have a son who is Huck's age and isn't named Huck, but he is named Buck. Interesting. All right. They also happen to have one slave. Lots and lots of parallels here. So pay attention to that. If you're doing that family structures, great chapter for you to analyze. And this is really a picture in this chapter to Huck of what life could be. Everything's hunky-dory here, at least at this point in the chapter. He's happy here. He loves the family. They love him. Of course, his whole situation's based on lies, right? Again, because it's Huck. But you have to beware in literature whenever they give you something that is, everything's going well. Beware the fall. And that's the case here with chapter 17. So, in this chapter, Huck's even going to become a poet. Not much of one, but a little bit. So, lots of great, interesting stuff here. So, enjoy these chapters.